Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the film adaptation, I'm going to grab here, of James and the Giant Peach. So this is Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach. So please check out my video of not only the book, but I did a whole other interesting video a while back on my opinions of Roald Dahl in general. So the basis of the story, if you're not familiar with it, you have a little boy. When he's 4 years old, his wonderful parents are murdered by a carnivorous rhinoceros. No, this makes no sense. It's a doll. He's sent to live with his evil aunts, and who treat him horribly and starve him, and they're evil. Typical Roald Dahl. And one day, this magical man shows up, gives him a bag of crystals, and says, if you make this into a potion, magical things will happen. He ends up tripping. It falls near a peach tree. It grows a gigantic peach and enlarges several bugs. And his aunts at first don't know there's bugs in there. Show off the peach, prevent James from having any interaction with anybody, lock him up, and then send him out one night to clean up the trash. He ends up climbing inside the peach and finding there's a enlarged spider, centipede, earthworm, glowworm, ladybug, and grasshopper inside. And because all these bugs can't stand the ants any more than James can, the centipede decide to escape. So he bites through the peach stem, and the peach rolls over the ants, who have come out looking for James and realize the peach is going to fall and go away. And they're squished by the peach. It rolls into the sea. It's going to be attacked by sharks. So James has the idea of, let's use the string from the spider and the silkworm to capture a bunch of seagulls and fly into the air, which is what they end up doing. He's also the one who tells them, it's like, we're not going to starve to death. We have a giant peach here, and we can't eat enough of it to make it disappear. So they're flying through the air, away from the sharks. They interact with a storm that acts like a giant monster, but also wishes them across the Atlantic to New York City. Now, this makes no sense. Because the flight path makes no sense. But again, it's Roald Dahl. Moving on. They end up trying to land, because now they're over land. They're in New York City. Yes, people notice they're there. So they start releasing some of the pigeons to lower slowly, but an airplane comes by and they end up crashing into the Empire State Building, where they're eventually helped down. The peach is helped down. Children eat the peach. The pit ends up in the Central Park, where James ends up living, and the various things happen to the insects. The ladybug marries the mayor. Again, no sense. Silkworm and spider go into business together, doing silk. The earthworm becomes a spokesman for skincare. The centipede goes into being a spokesman for boots, and the grasshopper ends up being he plays the violin. He ends up being part of the orchestra. So that's the basics of the book. The film follows this pretty closely. Parents die. They're killed by a rhinoceros. Though it's not explained that it's escaped from the zoo, and then kind of almost implied that it's in his head, which again makes no sense. He's living with evil ants. Similar thing, the magic man shows up, though this foreshadows New York City, which he has a weird map that's involved here, which isn't in the book. And he's imagining of getting out and going to New York, which again is not in the book. He trips and falls. These weird little green crystals that he'd been given fall out and get to the peach tree, and it grows a giant peach. And again, similar, the ants use this to make themselves famous, and lock James up so he can't interact with other humans, and send him out to clean up the trash afterwards. He ends up climbing in the peach. Now, this uses stop motion animation. Up until this point, everything's live action. The moment he gets inside the peach, it's shown that he accidentally, by eating some of the peach, swallows one of the crystals, and all of a sudden he looks like this. So Yes, he has a giant head, small body. Yes, it's acknowledged that he has changed when he gets inside the peach. And he interacts with all the animals. There's a giant musical number. And they want to get rid of the ants. Or get away from the ants because they're evil and they kill insects and they're ants. So similar to the book, the centipede bikes things away. In the film, the ants are trying to get away in a car and they actually escape. Again, in the book, they're killed. They're rolled over by the peach and they're dead. And they're done. But in the film, they're not. So they roll down the hill a little more spectacularly than in the book, going past various things, end up in the ocean. And this is where it deviates from the book, interestingly. Instead of regular sharks, they're being attacked by some sort of mechanical thing. So they're attacked by a mechanical shark. Similar to in the book, they capture these seabirds. Though this time they use a net because they're in a hurry. And there's a lot more drama, including the centipede nearly getting captured. And again, it's a mechanical shark. They do escape. They end up in the sky. Then again, James has to tell them, no, you can eat the peach. And again, there's a giant musical number. Then they do this weird deviation thing to add more screen time, where they end up over the Arctic and having to get a compass because they don't actually know where they're going. And they end up going into the ocean and going to an abandoned wreck and finding a compass and are attacked by skeletons. Nope, makes no sense. They escape. There's a whole big action scene there. Get back to the beach. Then they have to deal with a giant storm, only it's some sort of manifestation of a rhinoceros. I think it's kind of considered a monster in the book, but again, it's not a manifestation of a rhinoceros. And then again, it's a giant action scene. The bugs are thrown out, and James and the peach end up landing on the Empire State Building. And no, nobody had noticed this. In the book, again, they see it. And then it lands, and an airplane flies across the wings there. But, which again, this came out in 1996. There's no reason for it not to. 9/11 had not happened yet. But again, the peach ends up landing on the Empire State Building. James climbs out and turns back into a human. And eventually it's seen by people because juice is dropping down the Empire State Building. No, this makes no sense. They get James down. They get the peach down. The ants show up having supposedly driven their car across the Atlantic. Yeah, that makes no sense, and it's impossible. And then they try to prove that the peach belongs to them, and they show a picture, and then they attack James, and this spider and the insects finally show up because they had been thrown out of the peach, proving James's story true. They wrap up the ants and get rid of them. So, and then eventually it jumps to the peach pit in the middle of Central Park, and James is a young boy telling the story of what happened to a bunch of children and then the spider bringing them in. And then it rolls credits and you see a bunch of news stories of what happened to the various creatures, including the ladybug having a bunch of babies and the silkworm and skincare products. I think that it does show the centipede and boots. And however, it shows the spider going onto Broadway. I don't know what it does with the silkworm. And then of course it shows the grasshopper going into, I think, the Philharmonic or giant orchestra. So that's the film. So it's fun, it's entertaining. There's a bunch of musical numbers, there's some action scenes, it's stop motion animation. It's a decent adaptation. It just adds a lot more to it, which is bizarre. I don't see the point of the ants coming back. Like, having them flattened by the peach would be quite enough, but I don't know what they want to bring the actors back. So the voice acting and the actual actors in this, I will bring those up. So the actor for James Harry Trotter, that's the name of our main character, is Paul Terry. Now, Paul Terry is kind of interesting. He's not acting anymore. This was his only acting credit. He teaches sixth form math in England, which when I found that out, I found that kind of funny. It's similar to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is another Dahl adaptation of Charlie the Chocolate Factory. That was the main character, Charlie's, the actor who played him's only film credit as well. He is a veterinarian in Wyoming. So that's kind of an interesting connection. The actress who plays Aunt Sponge is Miriam Margolyes. She's also the voice of the glowworm. She is more familiar with, at least to American audiences, as Professor Sprout in the Harry Potter films. So Aunt Spiker is played by Joanna Linley, who I have no idea who is. She's primarily an actress and former model. She doesn't look appealing to me in person either. Moving on, the film makes her look very, very ugly, but that's the point. The narrator, who's another major character in this book, who plays also the Magic Man, is played by Peter Postlethwaite. So I've seen him before, but I'm not as thoroughly familiar with him. Apparently he's in Romeo plus Juliet, which is not a film I like. And I do remember him briefly from Lost World and Jurassic Park. I'm pretty sure he plays a bad guy. Then James Fathers plays by Stephen Culp, who is an American actor. And has not done that much. And then Susan Turner Clay plays his mother, which is very brief, and I don't know who she is. And the beat cop, he's at the end of the book. He's an American, Michael Starr. I'm barely familiar with him. I think he periodically shows up in various strange cop films. I see him as a cop from my memory sees. So on to the voice actors. So Simon Callow plays Grasshopper. I'm familiar with him. He's a British actor and director, but I don't know from what. So Richard Dreyfuss, who hopefully you're familiar with, I cover his film Mr. Holland's Opus. He's also in Jaws. So along with various other things. He's a well-known actor in the US. So he's the voice of the centipede. And the singing voice of the centipedes is a man by the name of Jeff Burnett. Because obviously Richard Dreyfuss can't sing. You can see that when you watch the too much. Mr. Holland's Opus, that he cannot sing. So apparently this guy is also let's see. He plays Dexter's dad in Dexter's Laboratory, and he plays Petrie in The Land Before Time. So, and apparently he's also done The Man with the Yellow Hat in Curious George. So that's what he's done. So Petrie is something I'm more familiar with. So Lady Blug is played by Jane Leavies, who is more familiar with the TV show Frasier. She's been in that. Susan Sarandon, who I hope you're familiar with, in a variety of things. She's the voice of Miss Spider. So if you're not familiar with her, in the top of my head, she was in Stepmom, she was in Thelma and Louise, and I have another film that I cannot think the name of, where she plays a crazy mother with opposite another actress whose my brain is blanking. My toddler's been fussy today. My brain doesn't always work. So moving on. The Earthworm is voiced by David Thewals, who is another Harry Potter actor. He was Rumpus Lupin in the Harry Potter films. So that's what I would aware of him from. So that's pretty much it. Again, this film was very good. It's a decent adaptation. Again, they add more action. If you absolutely utterly can't stand Tim Burton stuff, this is not going to appeal to you, because he was a producer on this and it has his name all over it. Or not his name, sorry, his style all over it. So in fact, the DVD I have in my hand advertises that it's from the same creators of Tim Burton's The Night Before Christmas, and then the same director as Alice in Wonderland. So this is very Tim Burton. With the stop motion animation, the stylistic stuff, the weird, definitely the weird, is very Tim Burton. So, but if you like that kind of thing, you'll appeal to it. It will work for most people. Cats. Hi, Kenra. She is joining me today. She's being irritating and fluffy. If you're not familiar, this is the Calico. She's been in various other videos. She's 12 as of this shooting. I brought her home from Romania, and she's irritating. But that is it for this review. If you like what you see, please sure to check out my book review of James and the Giant Peach. I have a variety of other Roald Dahl stuff coming or already shot. These things are not always shot in order. But be sure to check out my playlist for Roald Dahl and look forward to seeing more. I do a lot of other children's books. Roald Dahl is not one of my favorites. He's kind of creepy. And I do an entire video on how to deal with Roald Dahl, particularly when you're educating your children. I do a lot of children's picture books, a lot of family films. I do some harder stuff. I've done The Color Purple. I've done The Joy Luck Club. I have some more advanced stuff in there. I think I'm doing Contact at some point in time here. So mostly children's picture books and family films. I focus very much on homeschooling in this channel because that's what we are. I have a toddler right now, but we are planning to homeschool from the start. So I do have a sprinkling of homeschooling videos as well as some travel stuff, which is one of the reasons we're planning on homeschooling, because we want to travel. And it's easier to travel when your kids are not restricted to the school system. But be sure to check out the rest of my stuff. I have a lot of videos already out. I have a lot more to come. So like and subscribe and see what I got. Thank you.